When we have a lot of baggage growing up, it really does start coming to light as you start growing up.
Where so many of us find ourselves is we've used a variety of means, substance abuse, sexual addiction, whatever the case is, all kinds of things to shove down and suppress our feelings and to outrun them.
I thought sexual sin was my solution. But what I found out later on, and even now, it's not a solution, it's a problem.
The reason that we go back to pornography and sexual sin and these different forms of addiction that are so destructive to us is because they are solving a problem in the moment.
I thought going to a group of Christian men that support sexual sin was the absolute worst place I could possibly be in my life. I walked into a church, broken, marriage falling apart, and I stand here in 2025. A marriage is healed, families are healed, and I just got to give it to God.
We're addicted to the quick fix. And we have to recognize coming out of any form of addictive compulsive behavior, we have to be willing to go through withdrawal symptoms.
How do we stop the addiction that is killing our families and ourselves? Number one is you have to look at yourself in the mirror and understand your own selfishness. Okay? Because at the end of the day, this sin is about what I want.
If God got into the mess of our lives, then he certainly is willing to get into whatever mess you're in as well.
God can do a lot of things in our lives. We don't always see what the purpose is, and we don't always see what the vision is. But at least for my life, I felt like God has put me in this position to speak out, to reach out, to support, to love on, and to encourage all Christians.
Welcome to the Love and Truth Network podcast, your guide for hope and healing in a hurting world searching for truth. Here we explore God's extraordinary design for biblical sexuality, identity, and authentic community. You'll be impacted by incredible stories of transformation, practical wisdom from pastors and counselors, and the power of God's grace that changes lives. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Truth Network podcast. We're excited that you're here. And I have a guest today that is better known by my assistant, Jeremiah, as they've been connected for the last couple of years. But I'm excited to hear his story. And we're just excited to have you here, Vince, to share some of your story with us and for us to get a chance to engage in some dialogue around some of these topics.
Well, thank you, Gary. Thanks to the Love and Truth Network for having this opportunity for me. And we'll just be here to really share and really show men and anybody else that's struggling with addiction right now, just what Jesus can really do in this battle.
Yeah, we want to give people hope. We want to give people real life stories, and it's never just snap your fingers and walk away, right? It's there's usually, especially when it comes to sexual sin and struggles, it seems like there's a required kind of battle of really coming into yieldedness to Christ. But we know that He is there helping us, working with us, and really bringing us into places of freedom. But that can take some time. It always involves community, that I've found certainly to be true in the past. But we would love to hear you, Vince, just kind of share some of your story and, of course, God's story in your life with us, and just encourage us with that.
Yeah, I'm originally from Southern California. Was Catholic growing up. I'm Hispanic. Didn't really go to church that often. Didn't really believe in God. I'm just going to be real.
Sure.
Up until my 20s, I was practically an atheist. I didn't really think God was for me. I felt like God was for other people, but not really for me. I kind of disavowed all my Catholicism at that age. And I felt like I had everything under control in my 20s. And what I soon found out was, wow, I came with a lot of baggage growing up. And I just want to share that to everyone listening is, when we have a lot of baggage growing up, the family dynamic, issues at home, parents, all that good stuff, it really does start coming to light as you start growing up, as you start getting past adolescence and you really start looking at your life as you start moving forward, you really start noticing that baggage that you're kind of carrying with you. So for me, that baggage looked like alcoholism in my family, sexual sin in my family. So I saw a lot of that growing up. And to me, it was just like second nature. Like, that's just how it goes.
Mm.
And so I struggled a lot in my youth, really dealing with that. Kind of went into denial mode, right? Like when we're struggling with stuff, sometimes we don't want to deal with it right away, or we feel like we're not equipped to deal with certain things. So my sexual sin, which was cheating, porn, all these things that were just eating me up from a kid. And as I started growing up, I really didn't deal with it. I just felt like it would all kind of go away, right? I felt like, oh, this is just a phase I'm in. This is just kind of what I'm going through right now. But as I started getting older and older, like nothing changed. It kept on hanging on my shoulders almost. Like you just
Mhm.
feel this weight getting harder and heavier and heavier and heavier as it goes by. But back to my story, that's kind of where I came from. And I got married. I thought when I got married, things would be different. I thought it was just like a light switch. Oh, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be a good, solid husband, a good, solid dad. But it did not work out that way.
Mm.
So, just be very honest, I wrecked my marriage year one of my marriage, and did a lot of damage to my family because of my sexual sin, because I wasn't able to deal with it, because I felt like it was a solution, not a problem. And so I really felt my sexual sin was a solution to my issues growing up and being a man. I thought sexual sin was my solution. But what I found out later on, and even now, it's not a solution, it's a problem. My walk with Christ happened 10 years ago, 2015. I was not a believer. I walked into a church broken, marriage falling apart, family disavowing me for all the damage I had done. And I stand here in 2025. A marriage is healed, families are healed, relationships are renewed and restored. And I just got to give it to God.
Yeah.
God and Jesus got me through all that. Based on the commitment level that I put into it. So I just want to encourage everybody out there. Like, I get it. I've done therapy. I've done psychiatrists, psychologists, pills, alcohol,
Mm.
womanizing, you name it. I've tried to deal with the issues that are inside me. And the only thing that's been able to help me out to really change the trajectory of my life has been giving my life over to Christ. It has
Mhm.
been really encouraging other men in this battle. So, although my life started very different, very unique, very like isolated, now what I have is I have family. I have my family that I have my attachment with, but I also have Christian family, people that hold me accountable, they hold me accountable, and then I also hold them accountable.
Yeah.
But just that's kind of how that whole thing started right there. But let me tell you where I'm at now. In 2015, I went to this church in Southern California called Sandals Church. They accepted me, they loved on me, and they showed me what Christ's love really looked like, really looked like. And when that happened, that started the change. In
Mm.
2015, I turned my life over to Jesus. I followed his path. I followed the path of people ahead of me. We'll call people that have had sobriety for years, people that had restored their marriages. They took me under their wing. I learned a lot from them. And within 1 year, I was running a ministry at that same church, helping out men with their sexual sin. And if there was ever a moment that I felt so unprepared for something, it was being a ministry leader at a mega church, helping out other men with their sexual sin. So just to kind of tie it all together, God can do a lot of things in our lives. We don't always see what the purpose is, and we always don't always see what the vision is. But at least for my life, I felt like God has put me in this position to speak out, to reach out, to support, to love on, and to encourage all Christians, men, women. I've had to deal with everything in my role as a minister, uh, marriages, suicides, you name it, the good
Mhm.
stuff and the bad stuff. But
Yep.
God has put me in this position because he feels like he can trust me now. He feels like I'm a good vocal point for him. And I just feel honored by that. I feel honored when we have a purpose in our sin. When our sin gives you a purpose, there's nothing that could stop you, because no one knows shame, guilt, depression. I was suicidal. I'm not going to sit here and say I was not suicidal.
Yep.
I felt like I was losing everything. And for
Mm-hmm.
God to be able to restore this, it's just amazing. I just feel like,
and it's done through the power of Christ. I mean, as you said, and it really, when you talk about our sin being used for something good, that only God can do that. He can take it and turn it around and somehow mix together this recipe of his finished work on the cross and the Holy Spirit's power in our lives and the junk that we give him, and somehow turn that around for something that can be of great value to others in terms of glorifying God and also giving them hope that if God got into the mess of our lives, then he certainly is willing to get into whatever mess you're in as well. So I just think that's something we need to be talking a lot more about, our stories. It's one of the things I share a lot when I'm speaking and teaching and preaching, is that the church we don't share our stories. We hide behind this veneer of being better and always having been better than we actually are and have been. And instead we need to be we don't need to get into the gory details that ensline people at all, but we need to be clear and specific about what God has brought us out of and how he's brought freedom into our lives.
and let me give everyone an example of what freedom looks like. When I went to that first group at that church, my head was down. I was embarrassed. I was scared. I was like, what am I doing here? Is this where my life has ended up at? Like, I thought going to a group of Christian men that support sexual sin was the absolute worst place I could possibly be in my life. Right. And that's perspective, right? That was just my perspective at that point.
Yep.
And I was just totally terrified because I had no idea what faith and Jesus and God and church really looked like, right? You said it perfectly, Gary. Sometimes when we think of church, we think of the nice, pretty, right? We just think of the pretty stuff up there, but we don't think about the dark, the gory, the darkest lives are also in that church. And it's hard to talk about those things when you don't feel like you have a safe place. So I feel like everyone needs to get to a safe place where you have people around you that you can truly share about yourself. One of the things that I never did growing up was share. I never talked to people about my problems. I kept it all inside. I felt like I could handle everything. And God in these groups was really showing me, like, trust me, Vince, trust me.
Yep.
Trust me with your pain. Trust these people with your pain. Trust these people. These are my people. If you don't, you got to trust them too, Vince. So I struggled a lot initially just trusting other people because I just grew up never trusting anybody. So I just want to encourage everybody. Like, I get it. Trust is so difficult because we've been burned. We've been scalded by other people, churches, people, ministers, friends, family. There's a lot of hurt there. But man, I really want to encourage you to really step out of the pain and look towards the freedom. When we talk about fighting sexual sin, it's not a quick race. It's not a 100-meter dash. It's not even a 200-meter dash. This is a marathon.
Yeah.
This is a marathon.
That's right.
And so we have to train like a marathon in this fight. So again, one of the things I had to learn was this was not going to be a quick fix. Right? There just is not going to be. You've been dealing with sexual sin since you were a little kid. And you're telling me within going to a group and going to church within a year, you're supposed to be healed? Hold on.
Yeah.
That depends on how much work I put into it. Okay. Yeah. So I also,
Vince, I want to back up to something that you shared in your story about, you mentioned going to the church in California in 2015. Like, it seemed like that was a big change from where you had been. What even warmed your heart to the idea of going to a church?
Oh, that was the Holy Spirit right there in that moment. I didn't even understand it at that point. And I'm going to be like, let me tell you about that day, Gary. That day I was completely suicidal. I wanted out of my life. And I just remember driving by that church. It's a Saturday, 5 o'clock. They have a Saturday service at 5 o'clock, and I'm driving by, and I heard clear as day, just clear as day. Vince, you got to get in the church. Like, you're falling apart. You're really considering suicide at this point. I didn't realize what was talking to me. I thought I was going crazy personally. But as soon as I stepped foot into that church.
So you were driving by the church with no intention of going into church, but you saw that there was something going on. There were cars there. You had that sense, and you just pulled in and walked in.
Pulled in, walked in.
I love that.
Pulled in, walked in. And I'll never forget what happens next. I'm pulling in, walking in, and there's one of the ushers out there handing out, the what's going to be on today's sermon and the songs that they're going to be singing, that little document, right? He hands that out, and he hands it to me, and he just looks at me and he says, "Are you okay? Can I give you a hug?" Oh. And this is as where everyone's walking into church, Garry. Sure. And I broke down. And I had no clue why I was breaking down. Like I said, sometimes when we start listening to God, it seems so crazy.
Yep.
It just seems like, wait a minute, I'm not acting right, or something's wrong with me because look what I'm doing right now. Right. So I was really like judgmental of myself in that moment. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you crying in front of these people? They don't know you. They don't know your story, right?
So the truth, and the truth is right there. I mean, where so many of us find ourselves is we've used a variety of means, substance abuse, sexual addiction, whatever the case is, all kinds of things to shove down and suppress our feelings and to outrun them. And we've stayed busy, and maybe we're adrenaline junkies or whatever the case is. We've suppressed all this stuff. And what I think you're describing, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like what you're describing is what I've heard many other people describe is this weird sensation of getting in touch with our emotions again, not just anger and being pissed off and rage, which that was always fine, but it's more these tender, softer, feeling like these weaker kind of emotions, which frankly we need to have. And as that stuff starts coming to the surface, like it freaks us out because we've controlled that stuff all the time in the past, and it's the very thing that needs to come up to the surface to really join our hearts back into the life that we're living, to rather than being these compartmentalized people where we've shoved our heart away and our feelings and the pain away somewhere. It's now the Lord needs to bring that back to life. And it seems to me like that's part of what you're experiencing, which seemed very, very odd and out of control.
Yeah. I really felt as I was turning to become a Christian, there was a lot of resistance. Let's just I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
Too. There's a lot of resistance out there for me to become a Christian. There was a lot of things that came into my head, people talked to me about, and it was kind of designed to keep me away from discouraging me to be vulnerable with other people. Like you said, Garry, like I felt like I was very compartmentalized emotionally, right? Only certain people got to see certain pieces of my emotions, of my tenderness, of let's just say my vulnerabilities, right?
Sure.
And when you get to that place where you can't take it no more, right? And that's where I feel I was. I couldn't live with myself anymore. But I also couldn't live with what I was doing to my family anymore. So that guilt and shame was so big on me in that moment. And when this man comes up to you, he just gives you a hug. He didn't ask me what I did. He didn't ask me, like, he just wanted to hug me because he knew I was broken. And to me, that was Jesus in that moment. That when I think of that moment, I think of the moment when Jesus tells the adulteress, like, go on and sin no more. Like, I'm not gonna throw a stone at you, but I want you to get out of this mess that you're in. And that was my moment. That day at church, pastor talking about adultery broke down again in that, right? So like in just in a couple of hours, I went from this very hard, scared man to just weeping everywhere, broken, but didn't realize at the moment, but God was breaking me in his way. He was trying to show me something he was trying to show me his heart instead of what the heart I thought he was.
And a brokenness that leads to healing.
And that was the beginning of a long time of healing that took a lot of effort. It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of reading scripture. It took a lot of telling myself you're wrong, which is not easy to do when you feel like you got everything under control, right? But and then really the brotherhood that I got from the church, having these men step alongside me and really help me, really love on me, which is something that I never felt before. I never felt that kind of like encouragement or love from any group growing up, right? Now, your own family doesn't even give you some of that love and encouragement. And so to find it at a church in your most broken piece, it was just a blessing. I look back, it was difficult. I used to walk through the church with my head down. Now, when I walk through that church, my head is held up high. I just thank Jesus for just everything he's put me through, not in a bad way, but just the opportunities he's really shown me in the tough moments. I also learned I'm a whole lot tougher than I thought I was. I thought I was tough already, but when Jesus really starts challenging you and the Holy Spirit really challenges you to make some changes in your life because the sin is tearing your life apart, you really have to look in the mirror and really start looking hard at yourself and say, okay, how am I contributing to my sin? What can I do differently to expect a different outcome of what I'm doing right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me, Vince, when as you were talking about the shame that you were feeling, my wife, Melissa, got involved in a program that I later got involved in called Living Waters, and we've been involved with that for 20 years. And when she first got involved in that, one of her leaders had. When she first got involved, she was just filled with shame. She was always staring down at the carpet. She just couldn't look anybody in the eye. Mm-hmm. And then the things that she knew she needed to talk about and bring to the surface and confess, that it just, again, produced great shame. And she carried that for quite a long time. And I heard about that from later after we got married and we were still involved in this ministry. And one of her very early leaders and I were serving together at a week-long training at Living Waters. And she just shared with me, one day, she's like, now Melissa, now certainly, but even then, when we were married, she's vibrant and she's speaking into these issues, and she's living life in the open. And her whole countenance she has a phenomenal smile, and her whole countenance is joy, really, so often. And so the leader was just saying, Garry, you don't have any idea, when she first came into these groups, just her, as I said, head down, covered in shame, saturated in that, not being able to look at people. And to see the difference, your story was just reminding me. And of course, I had plenty of my own shame. And I remember, I can still picture the pattern of the carpet that I was looking at when I'm making some confessions and just feeling the heat of that shame rising up and the fear that guys were going to get up and leave the room and, those kinds of things. But yeah, the shame is miserable. One of the things you mentioned, and I want to put a little bit of a twist on this. And so hear me out, because it's a different direction than what you mentioned. Like you said that pornography was not a solution, it was a problem. But I agree with you. But I also want to back up and say pornography was a solution. Mm-hmm. The reason that we go back to pornography and sexual sin and these different forms of addiction that are so destructive to us is because they are solving a problem in the moment. But they're actually making the problem worse. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, in our craving for an instant quick fix, the microwave option of, I just want to get rid of this pain, I want to numb out, I want to feel something, or I want to feel soothed, or whatever the case is. So we turn to these kinds of things. And if we only see them as the problem, and they are, but if we don't recognize, wait a minute, I'm using this as a solution, and it is one, but it's killing me. God has another solution that actually produces life, and I need to lean into that. The problem is, one of the reasons it's so difficult to break, or why it takes us getting desperate to want to break away from our familiar self-induced solutions, is the reason it's so difficult is because God's way isn't microwave. Right. God's way is a slower walk of discipleship. It's the crock pot solution, in a sense, that is so much better and brings us to greater life, but it takes a while in the process, and we can't stand that something takes a while. We are so addicted, not just to porn or whatever the case is, or substance abuse. We're addicted to the quick fix. And we have to recognize, coming out of any form of addictive compulsive behavior, we have to be willing to go through withdrawal symptoms, emotionally, physically, whatever, to go through withdrawal symptoms and also learn what healthy relationships look like. In this case, we've so often sexualized all of our relationships, or many of them, and objectified people. And we have to learn now, wait a minute, these are the ones that God's put in my life to give me true life. Like, I love what you're describing about the church. I often say that church is our second chance at family. Yeah. And when the church is functioning best, it certainly is our second chance at family. And we need to lean into that, but also understand again that if we only see pornography as a problem and I've just got to stop doing it, but we don't dig underneath and recognize, wait a minute, how has it been solving my problems in a false way, in a temporary way that leads to greater addiction? What can I do to solve those issues, my legitimate needs? How can I meet my legitimate needs in legitimate ways? And I think so much of that is done through brothers connecting with brothers in deep ways, sisters connecting with sisters in deep ways that run a lot deeper than what we're experiencing in most churches.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, Gary. When I was running ministry groups at that church, we would run into 30, 40 guys a night, right? And we would hear lots of stories on what the sin is doing to people, right? What it's doing to marriages, what it's doing to kids, what it's doing to the man itself, right? And when you bring that up, the slow cooker approach, right? That is God. God is the slow cooker approach. When we start talking about making gumbo, when you make these like complicated soups that are multiple layers.
Yep.
They take time. That you don't go to McDonald's for a 5-star meal. You go there for a 2-star meal just because you're hungry. You need something in that moment.
Or a half-star meal. Yes.
Right. Half-star. Right. Don't get me started.
Sorry, McDonald's. Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm just kidding.
We still love you, but
in my opinion.
But I feel like I think a lot of Christian men walk in with wanting God and Jesus to be a genie, Santa Claus.
That was me.
Whatever you want. I want it gone right now.
Yep.
And my rebuttal to that is, I want you to look at every figure in the Bible, and I want you to really look at what transformation really looks like. Like when people ask me, Vince, how did you get from this area to this area? And I'll respond with this. It's because I focus on the transformation that God promises in his book. Okay. I didn't base it on what I wanted out of this, because I had already proven that I couldn't handle my addiction. I couldn't handle the way I was handling life. I couldn't handle any of that under my own power, right? I just was not good at that. I was not successful. Okay. And so what I had to do was really learn how to trust his way, his narrow path, his people, right? Again, my issue was trust. I didn't trust nobody. So one of the biggest things I had to do was really learn how to go into a church and start trusting the people that are there. Mm-hmm. Really trusting their hearts, that what they're trying to do is they're trying to line me up for success, right? And so I would work with a lot of men trying to get them to understand just that one concept of trust, right? Because I was so broken in trust, and it took me a long time to start trusting people. But once you can start trusting people a little bit, then I really want you to we really need to go into community at that point, okay? When you feel you got enough trust in the Lord, in the Holy Spirit, in Jesus, and we're talking about a little, remember, size of a mustard seed, right?
That's right.
Size of a mustard seed. That's all you need. Look up a mustard seed and show me that size. That's all the trust we need right there, okay? But that's all he's asking for. And in this very difficult moment where life is just falling apart all over the place, or you are falling apart all over the place, He's asking for this one tiny amount of trust. And I provided that trust. I trusted the men that were my mentors. I trusted the men that were guiding me. And I also trusted other men that weren't my mentors, right? I just went in there with an open outlook on, I'm going to give Jesus and God every opportunity to show me what they can do, but I got to do my part.
Yeah.
Right. And so my part was eliminating porn and eliminating adultery out of my lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And how does a man do that? How do we stop doing that? How do we stop the addiction that is killing our families and ourselves? How do you stop that? Right. And number one is you have to look at yourself in the mirror and understand your own selfishness. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because at the end of the day, this sin is about what I want. And only about what I want. Sexual sin is a very selfish sin. This is why Paul says, hey, out of all the sins, this is the one I really want you to pay attention to. Okay? Because Paul knew that this thing divides us. Straight up divides you from God, from it just disconnects us completely. Imagine
what's
having
the one sin that he says in 1 Corinthians 6:18 that it actually is a sin against our own body. Yeah. He says all other sins are outside the body, but the one who sins sexually sins against their own body. And I believe what Paul's talking about there is the soul. I think that sexual sin damages the soul in a way that no other sin does.
Agreed 100%. And that's where we have to really look inside of our soul and really try to use that opportunity. Like I use the opportunity of this group and church and God and Jesus to really open this up, really open it up, be vulnerable with it, and then get feedback on it.
When you're referring to it, you're talking about the heart. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, but just really looking at everything internally. You know, I came from a 12-step background when I was doing AA, and you know that's a self-inventory we got to do, right? Mm-hmm. We got to do a self-inventory, right? Really see where you're at, really see where you're struggling, but then also really try to understand what you got to do next to prohibit that, right? So my issues were porn, my issues were adultery. Okay, so that meant my phone needed to be very locked down. Okay. My phone, I had to be held accountable to my phone at all times, right? There was no going to the bathroom with your phone. The phone was in the living room in one charger and it stayed there 24/7. If I needed to make a phone call, it was in front of everybody. If I needed to text people, it was in front of everybody. So I allowed myself, I was willing to have other people hold me accountable for the steps I needed to take to remove myself from the sin.
And I think you're hitting on a really, really key thing. And there are so many things we could discuss here, but there are some really central themes that if you're serious about breaking pornography addiction and sexual sin in your life, then you have to be willing to humble yourself and receive help. You have to be willing to, okay, so you're a grown man and this is humiliating, but the point is, are you willing of your own volition to recognize this is an area where I've been completely out of control? I can't change. I've tried and I can't change this on my own. So I do need someone to come alongside of me or some brothers, maybe a family member or two, whatever, to be a part of this process and solution. And so therefore I'm going to walk in humility. I'm not always going to like it, but I'm going to recognize that the boundaries, the very close boundaries around me that are protecting me for this season when I'm still kind of craving the addiction or whatever is, and those boundaries don't necessarily have to be that tight all the time in the future, but we need them for a good period of time, just like we need crutches with a broken leg to be able to walk well or to move around at all until that heals up. We need that. And we are oftentimes too impatient and make excuses and justification to get what we want. I hear it over and over again from husbands or wives that have cheated on each other or are involved in pornography or whatever, is that, you know, there's when that's been discovered and there's this period of boohooing and crying and, you know, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again and blah, 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 blah. But often that's very quick. That that goes away, as sincere as it sounds, and maybe was intended, within a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, then it's like, oh, stop ragging on me. Why do you need to know where I am all the time? Just forgive me and move on, right? I mean, we've all heard that nonsense, and that's flowing out of somebody who really is expressing an unrepentant condition and is poised for failure. I mean, like going off the cliff.
Yeah, and that's another difficult thing, and especially like as we hurt people, right? As you hurt people, and I've hurt lots of people because of my sin, right? And one of the things that I had to learn in that is patience, right? I can't force someone to forgive me of
That's
something
right.
that I've done. I can't force them to. I cannot. And I'm not going to guilt them either. I'm not going to use guilt tactics to manipulate them in any fashion anymore. Like I used to manipulate my wife. I used to manipulate everybody, right? And when this started, when I really wanted to take this on with Christ, I said, no, we're not. We're going to be real. We're going to be honest. We are going to change our habits of lying, of living two different lives, because I was living two different lives up until then, right? You know, and so you have to lie, you have to hide, you have to live like you're 007 sometimes, just to get through all your cheating and all your nonsense.
Yeah.
Right. And
which is miserable. I mean, right. that's stinking hard to do.
Oh, it's hard. You know, one of the best freedoms Christ has ever given me was I didn't have to live a double life anymore.
That's right.
And when you don't have to live a double life, you could just be authentic. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to remember lies. Like I used to.
That's right.
Why did I tell that person? Wait a minute. Did I tell them last week this? Like you don't have to keep track or tabs of your lies no more, because you're living authentic again. You're living a real life again. And so again, if you're out there living a double life because of sexual sin, let me tell you what the best freedom is. The best freedom is not having to deal with that anymore, because you get to live your life the way He has intended for you. And it feels great. You don't have to worry about lying to people because you're not interested in the sin no more. You're interested in Him. Right.
It's very much akin to the Old Testament, and you know, certainly in the Old Testament and in other countries today, you see idols kind of everywhere, right? Physically, you're seeing them, and carved out of wood, and made out of stone, and made out of gold and silver, etc. And it's, you know, as long as those idols are intact, and of course there were times in God's family in Israel where there were idols everywhere, just loaded with idols. And when you had someone come along like a Josiah and rip that stuff down and destroy the idols, there was such relief. There was such finally the idols are toppled over, they're broken, they're destroyed, and there's an opportunity to come back into that the worship of the worship of our Creator, not something that we created, we're bowing down to and calling God. And so it's a similar thing with pornography or greed, other addictive forms of sin. And is when we finally tear that thing down, like it looks so big. If people don't, this is a common problem. When we have lived a double life and we are projecting something that is so good and maybe true of who we are, but it's not fully true because it isn't combined with the brokenness. Right. To be fully known is to be fully loved. And so when we're projecting these great images and casting those out there, those become idols. And it is one of the hardest things for people to realign their lives under Christ and find freedom is that they don't want to tear down that idol of how people see them, how they know them. Like if people knew who I actually was, all of their opinion of me would be utterly shattered. And the truth is that's almost more unbearable than giving up the pornography or whatever, the cluster of sin that we've entered into. And so we have to address that as well. We have to be willing to be humiliated by our own choosing, hopefully, rather than God. You know, God will expose our sin if we won't do it. But we need to be willing to humble ourselves and tear down those idols and be known. And then what you're talking about can flow in pretty quickly, in that now all of the facade is blown away. People now know me or see me, or at least a group of people, even if it's 3 or 4, at least somebody knows the whole truth about who I am. And in that, I'm able to be raised up and actually start living my life as a whole person instead of out of these file drawers of compartmentalization.
Wow, Gary. Yeah, perfect, Gary. Perfect. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. I felt like I was just really trying, like the guilt and shame was really bad that first year. Obviously, when you look back and you see the hurricane damage that you left in your own home, with friends, with family. I had family that didn't want to talk to me after the last time. Like I lost a lot, right? I just lost a lot. And that's when it became very serious to me. Like I have an opportunity. I could either take the easy way, which is just end it, or I could really try. I could really try with Jesus. I could really try with God and really see what that looks like. And I'll never forget that day walking up into that church. That first day was, let's give this a shot. Let's just give this a shot. Like it's either death or this. Right.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I didn't want to kill myself, but I felt so lost.
Yeah.
I felt so alone. And that's what I want to encourage people on this is if you feel alone, if you feel lost, I know the last place you want to go to is a group, but please trust me, there's freedom there. Where two or more, our Father is there. Where two or more are, so get around 2 to 3 other Christians and you just see what could possibly happen. But come with that faith though. Come with that mustard seed of faith. Come with your mustard seed of faith and get around 2 or 3 good Christians that are there to really love on somebody because they've been through it too. Yep. And someone came along their side and walked along their side too. So when people that are around there, that are around church that are really trying their best, okay, like I feel like a lot of Christians see it as a service. Like it's just a service. Oh, like a service. Like, hey, the DMV does certain services just because they have it doesn't mean I need it, right? But if you can look in yourself in the mirror and say, this thing is taking a lot. It's taking a lot of time from me. It's damaged my marriage. It's damaged my outlook on sex.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's damaged the outlook of my wife. It's damaged the outlook of this. If it's damaged anything, please get into some sort of community with other Christians. It's been a game changer for me. It can be a game changer for you, but I just want to encourage people to really look at that. And guilt and shame is going to tell you, stay in this car. Guilt and shame is going to tell you, you don't need to no, you'll figure it out on your own. Give it more time. Guilt and shame is going to convince you of so many things.
That's right.
And I just really want to encourage you and say no to guilt and shame. Start getting used to saying no to guilt and shame and start saying yes to Jesus. You know what? He even said it with the adulterer was, I'm not going to throw the first stone. I'm not going to throw that first stone. He even questioned everyone else there. Whoever's not sinned, go ahead and throw that first stone. And no one could.
Except for him.
And he still didn't do it.
Right.
So again, Jesus, if Jesus is in the house, then that's the kind of Jesus that you're going to expect in your brokenness.
And when you talk, Vince, when you're talking about that mustard seed of faith, somebody might not even recognize that. What is that? Like, I feel like I have no faith, that I don't know how I could possibly. I feel like I'm full of doubt. And of course, we know from the scriptures, even the man that was praying, God forgive me the sinner, and feeling like, or rather, the situation where the man cries out to Jesus when Jesus says, "Have faith." He says, "I do have faith, but help my unbelief." Right? He's saying, I've got kind of a mixture of both, and maybe even a greater degree of unbelief. What I think sometimes the mustard grain of faith is desperation. If you're feeling desperate, you know what? You're on good ground to actually pursue Jesus. And if you do, and the enemy, by the way, the enemy loves when we start to turn away from him and turn toward Jesus, and he's concerned about losing, someone in his fold, or even somebody who's a believer but has gotten caught up in some kind of addictive behavior, and he doesn't want to let you go. That's for darn sure. Then he often will sabotage your first attempt to find support or help in the body of Christ. There's lots of people who go by the name Christian, or maybe are genuine Christ followers, but are not in a good place themselves.
Right.
And you might bump into some of these people, and maybe they're in a group that you're in, and you don't have the best experience with them. Don't stop pursuing your healing. There are good men and women, imperfect, yes, but there are good men and women out there who love Jesus and have eyes for others and are looking for people coming in hurting and broken, like that guy at the door did for you. Didn't just shake your hand, but offered to, wanted to hug you as well. I mean, there are those people, and they're not, a needle in a haystack. So look for those and don't give up. I had to learn, for years and years and years, I tried to make everybody else, I wouldn't have told you I was doing this at the time. I knew better than to say that, but I certainly looked to everybody else as being responsible for my spiritual well-being, especially my pastors, those in leadership, my parents, and they're screwing up left and right, in my opinion, and it's all their fault that I'm not doing well. And at some point, especially becoming a man, I had to take the reins and say, wait a minute. Now, I didn't have to. I could have just lived in that perpetual position or state of victimhood or whatever. But if I wanted to change, if I wanted life to be better, I needed to recognize, wait a minute, I have authority over myself. I have autonomy. I can actually make some decisions. And it's very empowering when you start to do that and recognize, oh, God meets me in that place. God is connecting me with the body of Christ that is actually whole enough to walk with me in these broken places and to bring about healing. But I would love, Vince, to talk a little bit. Are you still married to?
Yeah.
I don't think you were divorced.
No,
so talk about how you said you blew up your marriage within the first year, and so obviously your wife has gone through a bunch. What is that healing process been like? And of course, it'd be great to hear from her on this too. But from your vantage point and what you've gleaned from her, what's that been like for her to navigate through these years of up and down? And what's your relationship like now?
Relationship is I'm not gonna, and every marriage got problems, right?
Sure, of course.
But man, I just feel like we're so much improved. I feel like when we were younger, we were both hotheads, right? We're both hotheads. And she's loved Jesus practically her whole life. So she's always kind of been the one that's kind of invited me to church and I wouldn't go. I was that kind of a husband, right?
Yeah.
And ever since we went through the adultery, all the porn stuff that I was into, and really started showing her how important this was to me. That really changed a lot, because the first year was very difficult, because obviously I looked at my wife as a burn patient. Okay. She's just had second and third degree burns all over her body. Okay. And you just don't start giving them all kinds of stuff. You have to wait for that skin to heal first, right? You got to wait for them to heal. And so you want to talk about patience. Like, you really want some patience, then watch your spouse have to go through their healing. Okay. A healing that you caused, a pain that you caused.
Right.
And so I couldn't sit there and just judge her on what she was willing to forgive me and not forgive me about. But what I had to do is I had to sit in patience. I had to wait for God to heal her heart.
Yes.
Right. So one of the first prayers I started having when I first started becoming a Christian was, God, do what you want with me, but heal her heart, because she didn't deserve what I did. She didn't deserve these years that I've been doing all this nonsense. Right. And so that's when I learned to pray. When you learn to pray for other people, it really changes your outlook on stuff. So again, I had to really learn selfishness was a real key factor in my sexual sin. And so how do you battle selfishness? And you said it already, Garry, humility. We have to example humility day in and day out. I had to learn how to be humble to my wife, had to learn how to be humble to my daughter, had to learn how to be humble with everybody, because I was not humble with anybody. I had expectations of them. But when they didn't meet those expectations, then it just filled with anger or disappointment. And instead, I wanted to show them the kind of patience Jesus was showing that adulterer. He gave her patience. He told her, don't be messing around no more. But he showed her love and patience in a very difficult moment in her life. And I felt like he was showing me the same thing. So I had to example that as well. So the first year was very difficult because I was trying to get under wraps my addictions, and she was a burn victim. Right.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult that first year. We did a lot of therapy. We did a lot of counseling, both Christian and secular, we'll call it, however you want to call that. But we did a lot of that to really get a better foundation on what was really breaking us apart. Right.
Yeah.
Because
and how many years have you been married now?
We have been married now 10 years.
Okay. Yeah.
10 years next month, or 11 years next month, my bad. And this all happened year one of our marriage. This all happened year one of our marriage. We didn't even make it a year married. And I was already causing all kinds of problems in my marriage. Again, I felt like it was a light switch. I thought it was something I could control, but it was not. It was a big wave, and it took me. And when you're trying to recover from a big old wave sweeping you away, it just takes a lot of effort. And when you see your wife struggling day to day because of the damage you've done, that guilt and shame is very heavy. But instead of living in that guilt and shame, and I'm not gonna lie, I lived in that guilt and shame for about a good 8 months. I lived in guilt and shame, heavily depressed. Couldn't believe what I had done to my family. Couldn't believe sometimes you look back and you're like, I don't even know why I did that. You just reflect and you're like, well, come on, man. Like, you weren't thinking, what's wrong with you? Right. And I started having those hard conversations with myself, sober too. Right. I gave up alcohol at that point. I gave up, I was smoking weed back then. So you really have to have a sober mind to really be able to inspect yourself, to really look at yourself and see what's really breaking you. Like, why is sexual sin so high on the list? Why is sex so important to me? That was the question I asked myself. Vince, why is sex so important to you that you hold people accountable to what they do and what they don't do? Okay. And then why are you so aggressive looking for outlets with sexual sin, right? Whether it be porn or seeking out relationships outside of my marriage, right? And then the last thing that I really had to struggle with was, like, how are we really going to change all this? What's going to be your new outlook on all this? Are we going to stay here? Like you said, I could sit there and just be a victim, Gary. I could have sat there and been a victim. Well, because of my family, because of the way I grew up, because of this, because of that. I could have used a million excuses as to why I was going to sit there for the rest of my life. But I didn't want that anymore. God was really showing me in that moment. And plus, when you're in community, and you see freedom, other people's freedom, that's infectious. I saw other guys who were 5 years clean without porn, 6 years clean without porn, hadn't stepped out on their marriages in 10 years. When you see that kind of freedom with your own eyes, you want that. You want that. So that's
and I think it's so important as well to, like, you're asking, like, why am I doing this? Why am I going after these things that are so destructive? And I think that's a very important question. And it's not just a rhetorical question. It really is part of what I'm hearing you expressing, I believe, is that you've entered into relationships that are real and vulnerable and transparent, and that there's a love and there's a care that you're experiencing now in the body of Christ because of the vulnerability that is filling up a lot of the empty places that were in you that led to these quick fix options of porn and hookup or whatever. And so I don't think that anyone gets out of really serious and heavy porn addiction or sexual addiction or whatever, or compulsion, that they get out of that just by knowing the right things to do and by praying more. Praying is very important. Knowing the right things is very important, but it has to connect to relationship, because God wants to pour in to those empty caverns of our soul. Wants to pour in love and care and affection and deep connection and relationships that start to soothe a lot of the places that feed into us being triggered and desiring to go out and act out in some, just to fill up the emptiness in some way, or to quell the infection, the emotional infection, or anything, just to make it stop for a little while. And instead, we need to be looking for the lasting solution that which is love and care in the body of Christ, that of course Christ is the head of as well. So I'm absolutely convinced that there are aspects of the grace of God, aspects of the healing power of God and relationship with God that we do not experience. There's an intimacy we can experience between us and him that we need to pursue. But there is a level also of what he wants to pour into our lives that he pours out only through the conduit of community. And so if we refuse for there to be vulnerable around community, we are automatically deciding, I'm not going to receive that part of your love and grace and care. I'm not going to experience some, and it's not a perfect experience, but it's a good experience of Jesus with skin on in my brothers or sisters. I'm not going to let myself experience that because I won't let anyone know me. I won't let anyone get very close to me. Well, that's not going to fill up those empty places that keep longing for some fix. So we're frustrating ourselves by not allowing community in.
100% agree. 100% agree, Gary. Yeah, that vulnerability is so pivotal. It's so pivotal. That's the attitude I had to take into all this. Was I was no longer going to be a closed book. I was no longer going to hold everything inside myself anymore. Again, that didn't work. Holding stuff in didn't work.
Right.
All right. And so you got to look at results too. I'm a results-based person.
That's
if something's not working, then we're not
over and over again.
Right. If it's not working, then why are we going to keep on putting time, effort, money, marriages, kids, you name it? We're putting everything into something that's not working. We got to find something that is working. Right. And so now my marriage with my wife, she's a rock solid Christian, loves Jesus. She knows I love Jesus. So Jesus has really solved and healed the marriage in a place where we respect each other. We love each other, obviously, but we also know one thing, and that is this marriage that we have, that we share. That's his marriage. He wanted this to happen. Right. And all glory to him. So I just feel like God knew I was designed to be with her, but I had to really change a lot of things that was going on inside my mind and in my heart and in my soul that needed to be changed in order to really align with the expectations of what a Christian is and looks like, and what Jesus is and what he looks like. Right. I want to be able to look back on my life and say, yeah, he had a rough start, but he finished really strong. Right.
Yes.
And that's kind of the goal right now, is really looking towards Christ in a lot of different battles. I use Christ for every battle I have in my life now. It's not just sexual sin. I use it for battles against anger. I use it with my employment. I have a very difficult, very needy job, and that gets frustrating, right? So you got to really look at yourself and understand, like, what puts you in the best position to be the best you, and what doesn't. And what I found out in my life was porn, sexual obsession, looking at women the wrong way, looking at them as pieces of meat. All those things was keeping my mind off of what I needed to be focused on. So again, men, women, whoever's listening, you got to remember, the sexual sin is designed to distract us. It's a time killer. It's an emotional killer too, because what we're looking online, we feel that's reality, and it ain't. It's all manufactured. That's porn is It's a studio like any other studio, and it's actresses, it's actors, and it's designed to make money. It's a business.
So Vince, you touched on something just now that I want to kind of come back to as we wrap up here, and that is, and you don't need to get into the details in terms of what you do, but for people listening, they might, and you're obviously involved in a lot of ministry. You're involved with other people. You're involved in a group regularly, at least one, if not more. But it's not like you're doing ministry full time. Like, you have a regular full time secular gig, but what I hear from this conversation, but also when you and I spoke a while back, last week, I think it was, we talked for quite a while. And what I hear, I think, is somebody who exemplifies the call of God on every believer's life. It doesn't matter whether you're in vocational ministry or not. We're all called to be ministers of the gospel. We're all called to be disciples of Jesus Christ. And we're called to be spiritual brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers to people who are lost and confused and struggling. And so, I think of Colossians, where Paul talks about comforting one another with the love that we ourselves have received from God, or the comfort we've received from him. Well, you've received comfort. You've experienced that. You're passing that on to others. I just want to really underscore, though, it's not like you have to leave your job unless God's calling you into some kind of full-time vocational ministry, that you can, your work is your mission field, and your family is your first mission field, period. And but there's so many other opportunities where you are just pouring out in people's lives. People are pouring into you. Talk a little bit about, again, without the specifics of what you do, but that is right? You have a full-time secular job.
Yeah, I got a full-time job, more 40 plus hours on call, all that good stuff. I have a family, have a home. I've got my parents here in Arizona, so I help them out a lot. But to go back to like what I was doing or what I do, even though I'm working, I answer phone calls. I answer texts. I schedule time with men that are going through divorces, that are going through periods of toughness, right? They're trying to do things right and they're struggling. I've been through a lot of divorces, helping men, so it's not just the sexual sin that I'm involved in, right? That's obviously my forte, right? Because that's where I came from. But at this point in the game, I'm supporting drug abuse. I'm supporting families that are falling apart, economic issues, right? The economy is not in the best position.
Yeah.
And economics is a big force of men that are checking out and say, well, I can't get a job. I don't have money. I might as well just sit around and take a look at this phone and just see where it leads me, right? We already know it leads somewhere bad, but so I'm looking at all these things. I'm still in contact with ministers in Southern California. We work together all the time. I work here with Revive 40, helping out men here in the Phoenix, Arizona area.
And that's a support group for guys overcoming pornography and other sexual sin areas. Yep.
Correct. Revive 40, again, designed for sexual sin, men's sexual freedom out of Southern California. That was the ministry I was a part of. There's another ministry in Southern California called Bulletproof. They take a 12-step approach towards sexual sin, but mostly focused on Jesus. They use a lot of Jesus in 12 steps at that group, at that entity. And like I said, I like talking to all the groups that are fighting against sexual sin. I like being a part. I want to be known as a partner to all the people that are trying to help Christians overcome sexual sin. I feel like that's my calling. And all it takes is a phone call. All it takes is a text message. I don't have to have all the answers, people. I don't have all the answers. But what I do have is scripture. What I do have is hope. What I do have is faith, right?
And a transformed life.
And a transformed life, right? And hopefully that's enough to help somebody really look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, if that idiot can do it, I can do it too.
Well, I think that's a pretty good place to land. And I feel the same way. If this idiot can do it, anybody can, right? So God, by his mercy and grace, has reached into our lives in very different ways.
Right.
Even though I went off into the LGBT world and felt like that was my identity and all of that, and you went off into this space, the truth is the root issues for you and me were very similar. They look different in the outgrowth. And that's something we need to realize, especially people who struggle with same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria or whatever. And when we feel like we're so unique and nobody really understands. No, the truth is we all go through a lot of junk and can get wrapped up in all kinds of pain and brokenness and losing our families, et cetera. And the truth is, same root, different fruit. We need to come and surrender to Jesus, and we need to support one another in real and vulnerable ways. And the church needs to become more transparent, more vulnerable in its approach to these issues. We love the church, and we want to see the church strengthened in being the church in restoring lives that have been sexually broken, that are confused about their identities, where relationships are broken, as with single individuals, married individuals, et cetera. There's so much much more we can do relationally to support one another. So it's been great talking with you, Vince. I'm so grateful that you came on. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you,
Yeah.
Love and Truth Network. Appreciate you guys, all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, hey, for everybody that tuned in to this episode, I hope this was something that's been informative and helpful for you, and you've been really encouraged by Vince's story and also just so many of the things that he shared with us. It's been good to have you with us. We look forward to seeing you in another episode. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for joining us for the Love and Truth Network podcast. We hope that the stories and insights shared have ignited in you a sense of God's powerful love for you and given you encouragement for your own journey toward relational and sexual wholeness. Remember, transformation is absolutely possible when rooted in grace, truth, and authentic biblical community. Subscribe today, share with a friend, share with your pastor, and we look forward to seeing you in our next Love and Truth Network podcast.